Hey, good morning, church. Hope you guys have a great morning so far. So, as you know, we're starting through Ezekiel, and we're getting towards the end of Ezekiel. We're into chapter 36 today. And so, this chapter, honestly, is so encouraging. So, you see, there's two different sections. And so, at this moment, as we get into this chapter, you see that Israel has been split up. The country of Israel has been split up. So, we see their property, their land be taken. We see the people of Israel be split up into multiple different nations. And so, in this chapter, we see the amazing love and the amazing power of God being able to restore all of that. So we have two different sections in this chapter. We have the restoration of Israel's mountains and the restoration of Israel's people. So, like I said, we see them split up at this moment. And so here we go. We want to jump on in. Verse 1 says, "Son of man, prophesy to the mountains of Israel and say, Mountains of Israel, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the Lord God says. Because the enemy has said to you, good, the ancient heights have become our possession." So here we see, in those couple of verses, we see that Israel's mountains, Israel's land, has been taken. God, the promised land that God has given to them, God has punished Israel, and this land has been taken, right? And so not only has this land been taken, but the people who took it are rejoicing. They are happy that they got to take it, and they are just defiling God's land because they're not people of God. They are just people that have taken and destroyed the land, right? And so then we get into verse 5. It says, "This is what the Lord God says. Certainly in my burning zeal I speak against the rest of the nations and all Edom, who took my land as their own possession with wholehearted rejoicing and utter contempt, so that its pasture land became plunder." So we see that God is speaking with burning zeal. He is speaking against all the nations and all of Edom. And so I can't imagine being those nations that God is speaking against them, is being angry towards them, right? And so I just can't imagine God being against you, right? With this much emotion, this much burning zeal, right? We get into verse 7. It says, "Therefore, this is what the Lord God says. I swear that the nations all around you will endure their own insults." So we see that God is restoring. God is going to take this land that these people have been making fun of Israel and has been making fun of God and everything. God turns it on them, says they will endure their own insults, right? We keep going. Verse 8 says, "You, mountains of Israel, will produce your branches and bear your fruit for my people Israel, since their arrival is near." So we see that God is about to restore Israel back into this land, right? Verse 9 says, "Look, I am on your side. I will turn towards you, and you will be tilled and sown." So we see that the reason that Israel is about to come back is because God is on their side. And that is just such an amazing picture that, God will punish them for doing wrong, right? But then at the same time, God is on their side. God is on our side no matter what we do. He'll punish us, but he will be on our side to restore us, right? So then we see that as we continue reading, we see that the Israel is coming back into where they were. So then we get to the next half, is restoration of Israel's people. Like I said, Israel has been split up into multiple different nations. They've been broken up, right? So if we look into verse 18, it says, "So I poured out my wrath on them because of the blood they had shed on the land, and because they had defiled it with their idols." So we see that Israel has messed up. God has punished Israel for them messing up, right? So then we keep going to get into verse 24. It says, "For I will take you from the nations and gather you from all the countries, and will bring you into your own land." So we see that God, how amazing and how powerful and how loving God is, that God takes all of these people, these millions of Israelites, these millions of people from multiple different nations. He's going to take everyone, pick and choose them, bring them all back together into the land that he has designated for them. So it's just amazing how amazing and powerful God is, that he can take all these people that are spread out across hundreds and hundreds of miles and bring them all back together. And he's going to take them from the nations and gather you from all the countries and bring you into your own land, right? And so, we see that God has restored the mountains. God has restored the people. And we get to the end of this chapter, verse 37. And this says, "This is what the Lord God says. I will spawn to my house of Israel and do this for them. I will multiply them in number like a flock. So the ruined cities will be filled with a flock of people, just as the flock of sheep for sacrifice is filled in Jerusalem during its appointed festivals." So we see all of that. We see that God is going to bless them. God is going to bring them back together. He's going to restore their lands. He's going to restore the people of Israel. But don't miss the end of that verse that I skipped. At the end of that verse, at the end of the chapter says, "Then they will know that I am Yahweh." God does all of this. He is so powerful. He's so loving. He does all this just so we can see that God is so powerful. God is omnipotent. He is everywhere. He loves everyone, and he will do anything for his people. He has to punish at some points if you mess up. As it says, they were defiling God. They were slandering God's name. But at the end of the day, if we are truly saved and we love God the way that we're supposed to, God will bring us back. He will multiply us. Like it says right here, multiply us like the sheep, and then they will know that we will know that He is Yahweh. So, I hope you guys are enjoying the study through Ezekiel as we come to the last couple chapters in. So, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. God bless.